Okay, we are rolling. We are rolling, brother. Champions of Champions boxing talk here. So it looks like Anthony Joshua v Andy Ruiz, the rematch, is nearly set. And I'm presuming, again, no factual evidence to suggest this, but I'm presuming that it will be in the UK. 90,000 people, probably at Wembley Stadium. It's going to be a big fight. People are going to say, oh, Joshua's numbers are going to go because of a defeat. No, folks, it doesn't work like that. Let me tell you why. Frank Bruno had multiple defeats, right? But he was still a British boxing icon, and is. He's still popular to this day. Frank Bruno can walk down any road in this country. Even in the States, among boxing fans, he's known, right? Let's face it, Mike Tyson lost some fights that he shouldn't have lost, but he is still a name. And after them defeats, he still continued to sell venues and bring in numbers. Joshua will do the same, in my opinion. All this thing of, oh, he's finished, he's gone. Oh, no. Listen. It doesn't work that way. You know why? And I'll tell you for why. Anthony Joshua's audience is very diverse. You have some boxing fans that like him. You have casuals that like him. You have people that are interested in looking good and fitness in general, such as muscle and things of that nature, that like him. You have women that like him. Women who are casual boxing fans. Not even that. Well, some of them don't even qualify as casuals. But let me tell you this, you can take a whooping as an attractive looking man and women don't care. Let's reverse it, right? Anybody here thinks Mariah Carey is attractive, right? Other females may not find Mariah Carey attractive because they're straight women, right? Now, if she breaks a heel and falls on the floor on stage, a lot of heterosexual women who are haters will maybe laugh at her. You know the guys that find her attractive? They don't care. They don't care. So they're still going to watch Mariah Carey. Same with the women that like Anthony Joshua. He could get knocked out till kingdoms come. And to a certain extent, providing he is still who he is, they're going to like him. That part of the audience. Yes, some of the boxing fans will go off him because they don't see him in that light, but he will still have a core audience because he appeals to a certain type of thing. Do you see what I'm saying? David Haye had defeats, but still Tony Bellew's biggest paydays, even bigger than the Usyk fight, was against David Haye. He had that core audience. Lennox Lewis had just lost to Hasim Rahman 2 fights before he fought Mike Tyson. You might say those two guys, when they got in the ring in Memphis, were slightly damaged goods. But look at the numbers. So, all this Joshua is done stuff is rubbish. What Joshua did do, and I've seen a lot of people say it, and it's a bit, I find it's an eye-opener, to be honest. You get in again the women that like the Joshua style of look, but now Andy Ruiz has beaten Joshua, you're getting women coming out saying, oh, I like a man with a bit of a tummy. You know what I'm saying? So Andy Ruiz has also now got a new audience. So this fight, it's a perfect storm. It's going to sell. Do you understand that? It might be as big as the Klitschko fight. Everybody loves a comeback. Right? Everybody loves a comeback. Everybody is intrigued to see how Joshua bounces back. Everybody is intrigued to see if what Andy Ruiz did was not just a one-off. So you've got all these factors. This is not going to be a flop, right? It will be huge. Had Mike Tyson fought Buster Douglas in a rematch, it would have been massive. Massive. So stop it with your silly little... It's basically the social media era's attitude, isn't it? Oh, guy slipped, so he's finished. Oh, it's over. Even if Joshua loses again, it is not over. It might not be what it could have been, but it is not over. let's talk about the fight itself. How do I see it going? Two respected trainers give their point of view about it, didn't they? And Abel Sanchez said that he thinks Anthony Joshua will win in the rematch. He's presuming, obviously, that Anthony Joshua was probably not at his best that night and will make some adjustments. Freddie Roach said he doesn't care how big Wembley Stadium is, a boxing ring is the same size no matter where you put it. He is predicting Andy Ruiz to beat Anthony Joshua again. Freddie Roach was one of the few, actually, that put a bet on Andy Ruiz to beat Anthony Joshua. Let's be absolutely honest. As some people, myself included, who analyse boxing, we should have really known better. There is a style problem for Anthony Joshua against Andy Ruiz. There is. I said that earlier on, in the first fight, that Anthony Joshua and Ruiz would be competitive. But Anthony Joshua would eventually break him down and finish him in the 8th round. But by God, my thinking was completely ruined on fight night when Andy Ruiz pulled that upset off. But I should have known a little better. I said that Andy Ruiz was better than Baby Miller and a better challenge. But this should not have been the seismic upset that the media's making it out. I'll tell you for why. It's down to styles. And if Anthony Joshua does not change his style radically in the rematch, I'm agreeing with what Freddie Roach is saying. You know why? When you've got a guy who doesn't use much head movement, advantage a fast puncher, a combination puncher, advantage number one. When you've got a guy who doesn't have fast upper body movement, advantage combination fast puncher, number two. When you've got a guy that sort of gets tired as the rounds go on and whose feet sometimes are kind of flat-footed, advantage counter puncher fast puncher, number three. Anthony Joshua, by the next fight, is going to have to change all this completely to win it. Now, he suffered some of them same problems against Dillian Whyte. But we have to remember Dillian Whyte at that point was not on the level of the current Andy Ruiz. But he had Anthony Joshua buzzed. Klitschko. He is a conservative. Once he's hurt you, he doesn't really use volume and put combinations together. He wasted the opportunity to really put it on Anthony Joshua after he knocked him down. But Klitschko's style gave Anthony Joshua the chance to recover because Klitschko is not particularly, well, he's a safety first type guy. That's another point when we compare different styles. Joseph Parker, fast feet, fast hands, was not allowed to get close to Anthony Joshua at Wembley. The referee kept breaking him up. Povetkin had some success. I had that fight 3-3 in round 6. Joshua subsequently finished him off. But you know why he did? Povetkin is a bit chinny. And Povetkin is older than Andy Ruiz. Povetkin, you forgetting, was really hurt against David Price until he stopped David Price a bit further down the road in that fight. But David Price was having his success. He was buzzing Povetkin. The difference was Joshua landed the same sort of stuff against Andy Ruiz, and Andy Ruiz took it. If Andy Ruiz can absorb punishment from Joshua, and Joshua does not suddenly make that head move, that upper body move, those legs move quicker, the stamina higher, less muscle mass in one training camp, unless he does them things, he's going to get beat again. It's only a matter of time. 12 rounds for a guy of Anthony Joshua's size and lack of stamina is an eternity, even at Wembley Stadium. And as I said, Joseph Parker, He needed to get close to Anthony Joshua's sort of chest. Andy Ruiz is a much more patient style of fighter. Or at least he appeared to be that way against Anthony Joshua, right? So a referee giving Andy Ruiz a bit, making him back off spatially a little bit may not make much of a difference. Because Andy Ruiz knows when Joshua throws, I can throw and my hands are quicker. That's another thing. There is a gap in hand speed here as well. A speed gap, right? Arguably, you could say there is a difference in tenaciousness. Don't kid yourself. Andy Ruiz, nice guy as he is, nice guys in boxing rings can sometimes be awful people. They can be lovely people outside the ring, salt of the earth and all of that stuff. When the bell rings, they're animals. Ask Roberto Duran. Ask Rocky Marciano. Do you know there were actual stories of Rocky Marciano as a youth and as a younger man? If he saw a group of lads across the street, he would cross to the other side of the road and politely let them pass him. When he got in that ring, something changed. So there is a lion nature about Andy Ruiz that maybe Anthony Joshua doesn't have at this point. Right? So don't go off, the personality of the guy. Do I believe that this was a plot from Andy Ruiz to fool Anthony Joshua into a false sense of security like Sky Sports try and make it out to be? No, I don't. I think Andy Ruiz is genuinely like that as a person. Just as I think Anthony Joshua. People call him Mr. Politically Correct, but who knows? Joshua might just be a guy like Andy Ruiz who doesn't want to hurt people's feelings. You do get people like that. They are genuinely good, nice people. Doesn't mean they can't fight. It doesn't mean they can't fight. I've seen some decent people, some nice people nearly kill some, people who are perceived as bad. I've seen them get absolutely slaughtered. You know what I'm saying? This, style-wise, for Anthony Joshua, is not a good thing. This fight, stylistically, Andy Ruiz is wrong for Anthony Joshua. And if Joshua pulls this off, I'm giving Joshua massive credit. Because style-wise, he's at a disadvantage. As I said, head movement is all wrong. The hand speed negates it. Upper body movement, all wrong. The hand speed negates it. Stamina, wrong. Andy Ruiz is capable of being a 12th round fighter. Andy Ruiz was not even breathing heavy in that 7th round. Right? So style-wise, Joshua has got it all to do. He's flat-footed, so he at times, he can be right in front of the counter fast puncher. His hand speed, like I say, is slower, so he can be beaten to the punch. It is all wrong. Does that mean Andy Ruiz is a better heavyweight than Anthony Joshua? Not necessarily. How stupid does all this sound? But as I said, people keep overriding this stuff, but it's true. Styles make fights. People are saying automatically that Deontay Wilder beats Anthony Joshua. Deontay Wilder may do. All that right hand has to do is land and it's over. But we have to remember there are differences between Wilder and Ruiz. Ruiz, first of all, is two-handed. Joshua had to worry about two hands there. Ruiz also is more accurate. Joshua had to worry about the accuracy there, right? If Anthony Joshua can be smart enough to find a way to divert Anthony Joshua's right hand, he's a chance. Of course he's got a chance. There's always a chance. We need to see it. Don't presume because Andy Ruiz beat Anthony Joshua that Deontay Wilder will automatically do it. That's like presuming Juan Manuel Marquez knocks Pacquiao out, Mayweather can do it. Didn't happen. It went 12 rounds. Styles make fights. Right? So we need to see these things. Deontay Wilder may knock Andy Ruiz out, because I think Deontay Wilder hits harder than Anthony Joshua. That same shot, it would be obviously a right hand with Deontay Wilder. But if Deontay Wilder landed a clean right hand, as Anthony Joshua did frequently against Andy Ruiz, it would be interesting to see if Andy Ruiz could take that punch. Maybe he couldn't. Again, we could end up with a bizarre thing where Joshua beats Wilder, Wilder beats Ruiz, but Ruiz beats Joshua twice. Do I believe that Anthony Joshua is doing the right thing taking this rematch? No, I don't. I think it's too soon. Not because Lennox Lewis took years to fight Oliver McCall again. Because Oliver McCall ran from Lennox Lewis for a good while, didn't he? He took Frank Bruno eventually instead. And Lennox Lewis beat Hasim Rahman straight away after he'd lost the first match. But there were differences, weren't there? Joshua was beaten systematically down by Andy Ruiz, and brutally at that. Didn't know where he was in the 7th round. People say Anthony Joshua quit. The guy got up from the canvas 4 times. He didn't know where he was. But he was beaten to a pulp by Andy Ruiz. He was outfought, outpunched, whatever you say, outboxed by Andy Ruiz. Lennox Lewis was winning the fights he lost until he got caught with one shot. So Lewis didn't need to correct any flaws, really. Just not make that one mistake again in the rematch. Joshua's got to correct multiple things. And the psychological aspect, who do you think's going to go in that ring at Wembley Stadium? Believing. If people thought Andy Ruiz was confident of winning the first fight, imagine the second fight. And people said, well, the fight was at short notice, so Anthony Joshua didn't really have much information or do much preparation for Andy Ruiz. Do you know Andy Ruiz only had 5 weeks himself? Just think about that. Anthony Joshua can only get better in the rematch, people say. Yeah, but maybe Andy Ruiz will. The one flaw Andy Ruiz did have in that fight was his feet was a little slow. If he lost 6 to 10 pounds, he might be able to close the space down on Joshua quicker. So Andy Ruiz can improve, and knowledge is a key. He knows now he can beat Anthony Joshua. He knows Joshua can be at Wembley Stadium ahead, and all Andy Ruiz needs to do, put some shots together, and the fight can alter drastically. He knows he can hurt Joshua to the body. Look at that 6th round, right? So this is not a pro look at the superstar Andy Ruiz video that I'm giving you guys today. It's really a credit video. I want you to raise a glass to Anthony Joshua if he wins the rematch, because he's got all these corrections to do. Style-wise, this guy is all wrong for him. And when you get a fighter who fights a guy who is all wrong for him, and he finds a way to overcome that obstacle, that is cause for celebration, right? The fact Muhammad Ali managed to beat Joe Frazier was a greater achievement than beating George Foreman. Historically, things won't tell you that, but George Foreman, Muhammad Ali was all wrong for. Didn't seem it at the time, but George Foreman was big. He was clunky. He ran out of stamina. He met a guy that could take his punch. And when he met the guy that could take his punch, that was a psychological dent on him. So therefore, running out of energy, knowing you're just hitting arms, and when you do land, it's not having the effect you thought it would, and then being slower than the guys, and your head absorbing Muhammad Ali's still quick hand speed. Stylistically, it was a recipe for disaster, but we didn't see it at the time. Well, I wasn't born, but you know what I'm saying. The media didn't see it at the time. Down went Big George. George Foreman beat Joe Frazier in 2 rounds. Destroyed Joe Frazier. But here's the thing. For Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier was far more formidable. I'll tell you for why. Joe Frazier, not as big a puncher as George Foreman, but big enough. But he had the stamina. And he was slightly quicker to do what Joe Frazier does for 15 solid rounds. Not a 5-round fighter, not a 12-round fighter. Joe Frazier was an animal for 15 rounds. And Muhammad Ali's power is not as strong as George Foreman's power. So Joe Frazier could absorb what Muhammad Ali threw and still get there in the fire. Joe Frazier probably had the better chin between Foreman and himself. So styles make fights. And the fact Muhammad Ali managed to beat Joe Frazier despite all that is what made Muhammad Ali great. Overcoming obstacles. It's easy to beat things that you know you can beat. But when you overcome things that are really massively, the odds are against you. Not in terms of the bookmakers and the hype machines and all of that stuff. I'm talking about the actual analysis. The reality of what goes on style-wise in a boxing ring. So Amir Khan believes Joshua could have done with a few more fights. And I agree with Amir Khan. People laugh at Amir Khan a lot of the time, but he's right on this. Maybe Joshua needed a few training camps to sort of smooth these flaws over, rebuild. And I'm not just talking about his trainer here as well. Because trainers get blamed for everything in boxing, just like managers in football. But you have to take responsibility for yourself when you lose. Boxers want all the credit when they win. They have to take some of the flack when they lose. Right? So Joshua, it's not on his trainer. Right? I don't believe that. I think people are jumping to conclusions. And if the rematch does take place next, it's going to be drastic trying to change so much. Even the trainer in one camp, he might be better off sticking with the same guy and trying to make changes from there together. But Amir Khan believes, and I'm with him on this one, but money talks. As I said, it's going to be a big fight, so it's going to happen. Amir Khan believes Anthony Joshua, if he fought some, I don't know, fringe contenders, while making the adjustments, he would then have enough time to implement the new style to his arsenal better than if he rushes it, right? Because Joshua, you see, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. It's not hard to remind an old dog of old tricks, and when you get hit, you revert back to type. Joshua can have all this stuff going brilliantly in training. He can look great on the pads and all that stuff. When Andy Ruiz lands, does Joshua revert back to type? Does that head that was moving in the first few rounds suddenly stop and go rigid? Right? He needs time to put this deep in his DNA, his boxing DNA, absorb it, so then he can fight with it consciously and, more important, subconsciously. Because it's what you do without thinking that is as important in boxing as what you do when you're consciously thinking, right? Because if you think too hard, you can be hit before you know what your next move is. It's like choreography. You know, as a dancer, you can't be thinking of your next step. If you're thinking about your next step, you know, the other guys who you're dancing in unison with are already on to the next move. But if you rehearse the routine over and over and over again until it becomes like tying shoelaces, which takes time, then you're in unison and you do that routine without even thinking. But it takes time. I'm not sure Joshua has enough time. If he manages to pull it off, I'm giving him massive credit. I'm giving him as much credit if he pulls off the rematch as if he beat a Wilder. Because style-wise, It's wrong for Anthony Joshua. It is so wrong on so many levels, and now I realise this. I thought Andy Ruiz would be a sturdy test, but Joshua would win, but I didn't think there'd be this many problems to the equation. Anyway, that's initial thoughts. This is Champions of Champions Boxing Talk. I'm out, brother.